This is a podcast where real doctors discuss fake medical emergencies. That means that unless you're suffering from skin failure, this podcast is not medical advice. If you need medical advice or medical care, please contact your doctor.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jackson Bain.
I'm John Kolosinski. You might remember me from such podcasts as Hi Everybody, a Bad Medicine podcast, this show that we used to do, and now we're doing again.
It's been a
this
while.
This is,
so
as
long.
I mentioned, this is Hi Everybody, a Bad Medicine podcast. Every week, month, quarter, annually, we discuss what Hollywood gets right and wrong about medicine and how the body works. You can find this podcast online on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Hi Everybody MD. Or you can find us at www.hieverybodymd.com.
Also, our phone line apparently still works. It is 530-DOCTORB. That is 530-DOCTORB. The B stands for brain, which is appropriate for today's episode.
Yes, we are going back to our roots and discussing The Simpsons Season 12, Episode 9, HOMR.
HOMR. HOMR, I guess. HOMR. It's like I would say it's a good homage to Flowers for Algernon, the book that we all had to read in grade school, where a lovable oaf, I guess, becomes a very, very smart person and realizes that knowledge is not what it's cracked up to be. I guess that's the best synopsis for this whole thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the synopsis of the episode as well.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. Good talking to you. We'll see you at Comic-Con.
Bye.
Before we get into the episode, I do want to mention that we are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con next week, July 20th, Thursday.
21st. It is July 21st.
Yeah. Thursday, July 21st at 8 p.m. I've got a couple panels. This one's room 9, right? Or is this the room 10?
I think so. It's in a numbered room in the main thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to be there, we're on the program itself. I think it's listed under Bad Medicine in TV and Film.
That is correct.
So look for us there. Visit us. It's a later podcast. I think we're closing out the whole show for that day. Yeah. So come visit us before you go to your big party.
We are headlining Comic-Con.
You know what?
And closing out the night.
That is a fantastic way of saying it. We're headlining room 9. Sorry.
But let's go ahead and get talking about this episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
I remembered it more fondly than I did seeing it again. This is a later episode as far as the golden age. It was season 12.
Yeah, it's right out of like those that 1 through, or not even 1. It's like 3 through 10 were like your really golden seasons.
Why did you pick this episode? Obviously, the Flowers for Algernon.
I mean, it's a really dumb episode. I mean, I think it all came to my head because I recently had to pull a lot of things out of kids' noses recently. And I just remembered I need to come up with a topic. Why not go over the one where Homer shoves a crayon up his nose? Right.
And we learn in the episode that he shoved a crayon up his nose when he was in preschool or grade school. Well, he shoved 17 up there, and he thought they all got out.
Yeah, and I think I think we should kind of go back a little bit and kind of discuss how they ended up into this whole situation. Was that Homer blew all his money on a motion capture company at a convention, a comic convention of some sort, and then realized he needed to make money, so he decided to do drug testing, which I actually wrote down some of the stuff that they tested and the side effects that happened. So one of them was ears on the body, which I'm pretty sure they drew from an actual experiment done on a rat.
Yes, the one where a rat or a mouse actually grew a human ear.
A fully formed ear that's not functional, but it was still then, it still looked quite like it. And it was called the Vacanti mouse Vacani mouse because I wanted to look at it. It's really weird. They used cow cartilage, injected it into the ear, and then injected it into the back, and then molded it to look like the ear, and then eventually chopped it off, and then could use it as an implant, which they parodied on an episode of South Park as well.
I, for some reason, didn't think that it was a situation where they molded it, and I assumed that, stem cells are magic.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't mold it somewhat, it would look like a cow ear.
Fair enough.
Because it was cow cartilage cells. So that makes it a little different on that part. I'm sure there was like the substrate itself was kind of designed to kind of make it grow in that direction, but it was cow cartilage that ultimately grew a regular ear.
Mm-hmm. And Barney's, the ears on Barney's chest were all functional.
Correct. Which is really weird, and it doesn't make any sense because your ears are not connected there. Though, fun fact, your ears and your kidneys are from the same origin.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So we'll get patients that have hearing problems or pits in their ear, and we automatically check their kidneys to make sure that they are functioning too, and vice versa. So if you have problems,
so you can get a kidney stone in your ear?
I mean,
kind of
unlikely because you don't pee out. Okay. I mean, your ears don't make uric crystals or calcium crystals. Okay. But
when you said pits in your ear, that's what I assumed.
Oh, sorry, a hole.
Oh, okay.
Not your ear canal hole, but like a hole in front of it, not like a peach pit. Mm-hmm. That would be gross. Though I have dug out many things out of kids' ears too. I feel like my job recently has been digging things out of people's orifices above the neck.
That's good.
Yeah. I would have many other discussions if it was below the waist, though I did do one, which I will not mention.
That's going to be for Hi Everybody After Dark.
Yes.
That's our 11 p.m. panel. Break into the convention center.
That'll be at...
Don't actually do that.
Or at a bar down the street from the convention center. Mm-hmm. More likely. The other part of why the testing is important is I think he brought in a rat to compete against.
Yeah.
And
they were doing a test of him racing a rat for a buzzer.
Yeah.
And then they found out that the rat wasn't part of the test.
No, and then they decided to do an X-ray of his brain, which the number of times I had a family ask me in the last week to do X-rays of brains to rule out whatever is way too high.
So X-ray is not what you do on a brain.
No, so you can't see anything past the skull if you're going to do an X-ray of your brain. You can do a skull X-ray to look for fractures. Mm-hmm. But really, you're looking for like a linear fracture. And let's say you found a fracture, you're going to end up doing a CT scan anyways to look for a bleed underneath that fracture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we don't just stop at the X-ray. We have to go forth with the CT. And it reminds me of, did you remember there was like this show on, I think it was Spike TV long ago called like 100 Ways to Die or 1,000 Ways to Die or whatever it was?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, yeah.
They had one that they swore was true where a couple broke into an X-ray suite, had relations, but they kept pressing on the X-ray button and they both died of brain radiation. Mm-hmm. Not possible.
Isn't that how we get the Hulk?
Yeah, gamma radiations. These are X radiations. Different waves, which who knew, right?
Is there more danger for getting a lot of head X-rays versus, other parts of the body?
I think the more dangerous parts are parts that grow really quickly, or I shouldn't say grow, but like the cells turn over quick. Yeah. So like your thyroid's pretty bad. Your ovaries, testicles, those are pretty bad places. Soft tissue places like your gut, if you got a lot, that could potentially be dangerous too. But really the big parts are your thyroid and your nether regions.
And your skin.
In your skin, but you really don't do skin X-rays. It just happens to be happens to be one of the barriers that keeps the X-rays from going through, I guess. That does remind me, like we've used skull X-rays once in my trauma case where I had a patient with a pipe that went through his head, but that one was just to make sure to see how deep the pipe was.
Yeah, your Phineas Gage incident,
which is kind of like this crayon in the head, right?
Yeah,
like it's kind of how lobotomies used to be done. Like you would get an ice pick, go through the nose, root around, cut the frontal lobe, and then it changes your personality.
And then it's bliss.
But you're also like, a lot of the times they just end up as like zombies, right? Mm-hmm. You could lose all of that stuff. So you would imagine if he went through his skull with a crayon, which is a very soft thing to try to pierce through that cribiform plate.
So there is a barrier then between your nose and your skull.
Yes.
Or between your nose and your brain, rather.
Yes. It's called the cribiform plate. It's a tiny piece of bone where your nerves that help you smell go through. So if people have really bad skull fractures, it can sever all those nerves and you can't smell again.
Okay.
Which is why I think families, when I ask them if they use a neti pot to clean out their nose or if we use like a bulb suction, everyone gets worried that I'm going to suction too hard. I'm going to suck out their brain, which is impossible. It takes a lot of force. Mm-hmm. You want to use probably an industrial suction machine to get brain out that way. But you also have to break the bone first.
And so the crayon unlikely to break a bone.
Correct. It's probably going to smush the crayon before it breaks the bone.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the situation, though, where there is a foreign object that is causing this sort of basically mental disability, Homerism, would the removal of the object result in a return to functionality this long down the line?
I mean, the way to think about it too is like, let's say you had a tumor in your brain and you took it out. You're not going to get smarter necessarily, right? You might regain some function if it's impinging on something, but it's a very acute thing. Like if you had it and it's something that rapidly grew and you lost function, you have to remove it quickly enough so that you can regain that function. This was in for what, decade, 2 decades? Yeah. You're unlikely to do that. You're more likely to have an infection from it than anything, because that's like a foreign body that's gross. So if you kind of put it up there, you're more likely to just have like a brain abscess, and then he probably would have been dead already. So no, you won't regain function.
Sorry, Homer.
Yeah. But I think it brings to the next point, how I think Homer was miserable that he was smart, but he said, is there no room for the man with the 105 IQ?
Which is delightful.
Yes, because
for those who don't know how IQ works, 100 is average.
Correct. So he's just slightly above average. And the other thing, too, was he said he gained 50 points when the crayon was removed, right? So if his IQ was 55, he's technically mentally disabled at that point. So he should not be...
He's almost profoundly mentally disabled.
Correct. Like, not able to participate in society disabled. So that definitely doesn't work that way. And also, there's this misconception that if you raise your IQ, you automatically gain new facts and you become smarter and you're able to explain things in a much more eloquent way like he does. It doesn't happen that way, though. Like, IQ doesn't necessarily mean you're a much better speaker.
It improves your processing speed.
If you raise your IQ quickly?
Like, it's not increasing it's not changing what's on the hard drive. It's you've got a better processor on your computer.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to explain it. Yeah, because you're not necessarily downloading a bunch of new facts the minute your IQ goes up. Like, that reminds me, there was like this one long ago, there was a show like Battle of the Child Geniuses, and all they did was tell how high all these kids' IQs were and then just tested them about random facts. And I'm like, that doesn't really prove how smart they are. It just proves how good they are about memorizing random facts.
And whether they've been exposed to that fact.
Correct, yeah. Like, I don't think asking them... Surprisingly, they lost on pop culture a lot, but they were really good on history and math, like doing math questions.
So the things that they would be exposed to in school versus were they paying attention when mom was watching Frasier?
Correct, yeah. Or if dad was running through books and books of SAT questions with them and they were able to process it. So I think that's just a weird thing that they mentioned how smart he got and how his IQ just jumped 50 points. I'm like, oh my God, he was really, really disabled, more so than I thought. So that was just shenanigans on that part. Oh, I want to mention the one dumb line that I heard that about Lisa and the dry waffles still. How Lisa, I know I'm jumping around, but when they had the family meeting discussing how they lost all the money before he joined all the drug testing, and Lisa mentioned that the family wouldn't be in such dire straits if they didn't spend so much money on maple syrup because of mom's dry waffles. And Marge counters back that if she ate more meat, she'd have more natural lubricant. I found that funny. It's not a true fact at all.
Aw.
I know. I mean, I shouldn't say it all that, but I mean, I eat plenty of my diet is varied, and I don't feel like mouth lubrication is a side effect of my varied diet. What else? Was there anything else you remembered from that episode that you want to talk?
Honestly, the things that jumped out at me the most were we are trying to make The Simpsons current in the early 2000s. So things like the old iMac.
Oh, the old iMac.
Yeah, like the big blobby green iMac from the early 2000s.
Oh yeah,
things like that. Those jump out at me.
I mean, they were really trying hard to be relevant during this time a little bit, too, because you can feel the decline a little bit. I really like this episode, but you can definitely feel the decline in wittiness, I guess, is the best way to say it. Speaking of witty people, Mo, when they gave him the business card for Mo and it says, "Yes, I'm a surgeon," or whatever it was, and then that's where he gets fixed. That made me cringe a little bit, especially when he started doing the hammering of the crayon into his head.
Yeah.
The Crayola Oblongata, I think, was the name of the procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And the medulla oblongata is way on the opposite side of the brain compared to where your nose is.
But everyone knows what the medulla oblongata is from Waterboy.
Yes, it is the part that makes you angry.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike what Bobby Boucher said, it was because a crocodile did not have any toothpaste did not have a toothbrush for all those teeth, according to his mama. I can't believe I pulled up that piece of knowledge from my brain on that part. But the Crayola Oblongata, if you need to watch this scene, it's just him essentially taking a blue crayon, I believe it was, put it in the nose and started hammering it. And I remember the first time I ever watched this episode, and when he did the 2 bangs and then he goes defense and then starts like undulating on the bed, I thought for real that he just gave Homer more brain damage.
That's a real question is, would inserting a similar foreign object the same way necessarily result in the same sort of impairment?
So it depends where you hit. We're taught that the motor cortex itself is like in the middle of the brain, like right on the top of your head. And it kind of reaches down on both sides. So think of it like a scarf or some kind of drape that drapes down both sides of your head over your ears.
I'm just picturing a beer helmet.
Okay, so imagine the middle of the beer helmet and then how you have the 2 cans on the side.
I could have just said headphones since we're both wearing them, but no, the beer helmet.
That's also valid too. But if you imagine the beer helmet with the 2 beer cans on the side of your head, if you put a straw in between both of them to connect both beer cans, that's where your homunculus sits, and that controls your motor function. So if you impair that part, you lose function and control of certain body parts depending on where you hit. So that's a good way to imagine it. So you have to actually insert the crayon way further back to actually hit that part. Further back than where you would be able to cover up with your thumb on an X-ray.
Like Dr. Hibbert did.
Yeah. I would also say a crayon is too light, I guess, is a nice way to say it, or radio lucent.
Non-reflective?
I guess that's a good way to say it too. It's not dense enough to stop X-rays enough, or to make X-rays bounce back enough to pick up on a film. So you won't see an X-ray that clearly. Also, when they were kind of rotating his head to look for the X-ray, I think it was like one of the scenes during the lab when they were rotating his head to look for the crayon itself. It's really hard to do that fully like that. You actually have to do a full reconstruction, and that uses a lot of resources and power that most companies and hospitals don't do. They'll do it with like skulls, but they won't do it with the full brain rotating around like that. Don't know why. I'm guessing it's because it costs too much. But kind of going back to it, like the whole hammering into the head, probably won't. I'm surprised you won't jump around that much, but I'm also surprised he wasn't sedated. But also, it is Moe's bar that he's strapped down to. And then the question that the comment I always say is not enough blood, right? There's so many blood vessels in that area that the minute you drill through, you're going to be gushing blood.
Well, I mean, anyone who's had a bloody nose knows that there's blood vessels there to break.
So many blood vessels. So any kind of irritation of that area is going to lead to a pretty significant bloody nose. And then once you go towards the brain, your brain requires a lot of energy. So there's a lot of blood flow. There's layers surrounding the brain too. So if you tear any of it, you start bleeding too. And that actually reminds me, there's one layer around the brain called the dura mater, which is very, very tough, and it's hard to pierce through as well. So a lot of times when you get bleeds, you actually form a pocket between your skull and that dura, and that causes like a hematoma under there that pushes on your brain and causes trouble. It means tough mother, essentially. Yeah, dura mater means tough mother. So
nice.
That's how I remember. Pia mater is something else, but I remember dura mater meant tough mother. So not enough blood, and then he recovered pretty quickly from the procedure.
Which was technically brain surgery, just poorly done.
Yes. It's basically a rotor-rooter brain surgery to fix what's going on up there. By fix, I mean return him back to normal so that the sitcom world is intact again. I'm trying to see. I think that's most of my notes on this one. It's a short episode. I would still watch it. It's still one of the better episodes in the season because the rest of them, I'm looking through it, are not super great.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Sorry. There's one that's really good, but it's nothing to do with medicine.
But which one is it?
It's the one where they join the Navy.
Oh.
Yes.
But Crimson Tide or?
No, sorry.
Or even at the Niage.
Yvonne et Niage.
The one with the boy bands.
Correct. That one's a great episode. What am I talking about? That one I highly suggest too. So only a handful of good episodes in this season. Other than that, But yeah, Johnny, do you have any other comments on this whole thing?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So the human centipede bills itself as 100% medically accurate.
How dare you?
And if that's the case, and if we're using that as our baseline, how medically accurate is season 12, episode 8 of The Simpsons, HOMR?
It's not Lucy bad.
Okay.
Which is 10%, right? I think that was still that's still on the list for our worst movie. I don't think we've
Crank 2. Crank 2 got a pity 1.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, it's not that bad. I'm trying to oh god. So we do skull x-rays sometimes. Drug testing is weird, and that drug testing was highly unethical. The IQ thing was all off too, but I kind of would believe that Homer would have a very low IQ, but not physically disabled IQ, like 20. Honestly, it's still more realistic than Lucy, because Lucy's whole premise was based on a lie, right? It's all based on 10%. You use 10% of your brain on a daily basis, and if you use 100%, you're a superpower. There's still some mildly true things in this episode.
Crayons are real.
Crayons are real. Affecting your frontal lobe will affect your personality, and his personality did change. You can go through to your brain through your nose, but it takes a lot of force. Oh, crayons don't go through your ears, though. I think that was part of when he first inserted 17 crayons into his ear or into his nose, and they came out his ears. Does not happen that way. There's your eardrum and a lot of things in the ways. No, that'll go down.
So
to
he'd be deaf.
He'll be potentially. I would say it's probably 15%. Then I wouldn't actually. I'm actually taking 5 points away as I'm talking to you about this case right now. So yeah, I'm going back 15. But yeah, I think that's fair on that part.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that this was not the high point of Simpsons medical accuracy.
No, I'm surprised Dr. Nick wasn't called in to do the.
I was
cheap
too.
surgery, right?
Was Hank Azaria in the episode at all?
Yeah,
because he's Mo.
Yeah, he 100% was in the episode. I'm surprised they didn't use Dr. Nick to do the surgery, because that's right up Dr. Nick's alley.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they used Mo. That just felt like a weird character selection. Because at least you still have a quack doctor doing a quack procedure. That still works. So yeah, don't agree.
So it loses 5 points for lack of medical accuracy and 5 points for lack of Dr. Nick.
Correct. See, if you ask me, and I know the next question is usually, what would I change to make this more medically accurate? Use a doctor named Dr. Nick. That's probably what I would use on that part.
Use a piss poor doctor.
Yeah, because a piss poor doctor would do this procedure.
100%.
Yeah. That would make it 100% accurate.
Anything else that we want to add talking about this one?
I'm trying to think. Don't. I think Homer said it best during his speech to all the children. Don't put anything up your nose, because you might have a crayon of injustice or intolerance or whatever like that. Just don't put anything up your nose. That's a good life lesson in general. You have a bloody nose, don't wad up toilet paper or paper towels and put it up your nose. It doesn't stop the bleed.
Don't put a tampon up there.
We do put tampons up people's noses, though.
But you're a doctor.
Yes. We use rhino rockets and tampons. But really the reason for that is it pushes on the walls of your nose.
And so it's applying pressure?
Correct. Whereas if you put just like regular toilet paper or paper towels in your nose and you take it out to check if the bleeding stopped, you essentially pulled out the clot that formed, and then the bleeding will continue. So don't put that up your nose either.
Yeah.
Please
don't put cocaine up your nose.
Oh man, you know that used to be a cure, right?
Yep.
For bloody noses.
We've talked about tack on this before.
Yeah. So, but don't do cocaine up your nose. There's many fine dining establishments that have signs that say don't do cocaine in their bathrooms too. So yeah, just don't put anything up your nose. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, that's our Comic-Con tip: is stay away from cocaine.
Yes, please. Please do.
It's probably fentanyl.
Oh, don't get me started on that part too, with people touching fentanyl and then losing it.
We can do a real life episode on fentanyl dollars at some point in time.
They're not real. They're not real, you guys. You can't get overdosed on fentanyl dollars or touching it.
Yeah, someone in Hollywood make a sitcom episode about fentanyl dollars so that we can rip it apart and make you feel bad.
Yeah, I will gladly rip it apart and then discuss about the hysteria over certain things. Mm-hmm. I will You don't even have to pay me that much, or pay me. Just hire me. That's right.
Don't pay me. Just hire me.
Just hire me, and then pay me for later ones. The first one's free, just like the cocaine.
All right. With that, thank you, Jackson. It is good to be back. We will be at Comic-Con later this week if you're listening to this as it comes out, and we will be back as soon as we can with more episodes. Yay, Jackson's COVID work schedule.
Yay. Good to be back. I'll see you all at Comic-Con, and then hopefully we'll see you very soon for the next episode.
Yep. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye.